Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Perform Happy podcast. I am excited to have a Perform Happy alumni on the show today, who has run the gamut of sport parenting from doing the best she can, which is she did a lot of the things that most really well-meaning parents did, that some were helpful and many were not. And she's gotten to the place where her child is launched into college and competing at a collegiate level. Susan Bardack, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. This is such an honor. I absolutely love what you do. I really took to heart everything I learned from you through the process, and I know my daughter has as well. So, really appreciate this opportunity.
Yes. So, can you tell us a little bit about Ashlyn, your daughter's journey from
Yeah.
gymnastics to now college diving, and how your role as a sport parent
Yeah.
evolved along the way?
So it was really interesting because sports were not a main part of my life when I was growing up. I was actually a musician. And I started my daughter in music, but I saw that she was doing cartwheels in the corner when music lessons were supposed to be happening. So I thought, maybe I should switch her to sports. And she didn't want to go at first to like gymnastics, but she kept doing like flips in the house and kept doing like dangerous things. And I thought, I really think she should take classes. So right then, I tried to really encourage her strongly to take gymnastics class. And she was really hesitant. But we got to the first day of gymnastics class, and something miraculous happened. There was a friend in her class. And so she right away was like, "Oh, I have a friend in this class." So that was like really wonderful. And right off the bat, even in the first class, I could see that she had an aptitude for the sport. I could see that she was very excited about it and was like doing skills. And, as classes went on, it just became really apparent to me that, like, wow, this kid is really good at gymnastics. And I had done a little bit of gymnastics, but didn't take it very far. So it was exciting to see that. So one day she was in class and she noticed pictures on the wall. And do you have any idea what the pictures were, Rebecca?
Tell me, what were these pictures?
The pictures were of the team.
Hmm.
So it was the team in their shiny leotards with their hair pulled back, and they just looked so great. And so she was like, "Wow, what's this, mom?" And I said, "I think those are the kids that are on the team." And she's like, "Well, I want to be on the team too." So when you hear this as a parent, you're like, "Oh boy, like this could be really exciting." And it is really exciting, like if your kid gets on one of the teams. So I tried to figure out as a parent, like, what should I be doing? And so I enrolled her in a second rec class. And then this is where I probably like took it too far. I also like would have her go to an open gym at a totally different gym because our gym didn't have that. And it was really interesting because, she was going right along with everything and there weren't any like major fears at this point. But, I was trying to help her instead of like just kind of letting it flow and letting her like get onto the team in her own way to get onto this team. And so eventually, a coach noticed her, a really wonderful woman. And she basically was like, "Hey, we're going to put you on the intramural team." And that went really well. And she was only on it for a month. And then she went up to Excel, which I love the Excel program because you can do gymnastics, but you can do a lot of other things too. And she really liked that. And she really like soared in Excel. And that's when they asked her to be on JO. And I really didn't have any sense of what JO was all about. I knew it was, a number of hours. But I also knew that like kids who love gymnastics, that's what they do. They go to JO. And so she went to the JO team and she actually, because she was older when she started gymnastics, like I say older, but I mean like age 8, she actually passed out a level 4. Like they wanted to move her on to level 5 because she was a little bit older and they wanted to put her with her age group, which made total sense. And she was ready for level 5. So she passed out a level 4, went to level 5, and she really did well. And for the next few years, everything was really pretty good. She would really get a lot of anxiety and anxious feelings when it came to meets, and I totally didn't know how to handle that. I just wasn't prepared for what that means or how you handle it when a child is extremely anxious about a meet. But she would go back to practices and she would really love practices. And then I kind of noticed as she progressed, she was doing super well in the physical side and like moving up. But if this makes sense to you, it was almost like her mental side didn't catch up with her physical side. So it was like they were at kind of two different places. And I remember like there were times where she would fall off the beam and she would become very scared. And I would say things along the lines of, well, you know, put that fear aside, like just keep going and just get back on the beam. Next time you want to do it. Because my fear was that those fears would drive her away from the sport. Instead of the opposite, where, to acknowledge the fear and to say, hey, yeah, that must be like really scary. Like I totally understand that. And I didn't really go that way, which was a problem. And, other things that I did is I'm a very like enthusiastic person. So my child is a more introverted, introspective child. And so on the way to meets, she really used that time to process. Whereas I would be playing like the Olympic theme song in the car, basically, because that is what would inspire me. When I run a race, that's the music I play. But this is a child and it totally sends the wrong message. Not that the message was ever, you're going to the Olympics, but it was just like, hey, this meet means something. This is, a song for Olympians. And that was truly like not a great theme to set going into a meet.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
I want to just jump in and like completely
yeah,
relate to every word you're saying. So I have a 9-year-old and I am like, I have got, decades of experience with all of this stuff. And I still have done so many of the same things where I'm like, you want to get on the team? Let's add that second rec class. You want to, let's like, do you want to go this extra skills class? So like, I just want to acknowledge any parent out there who's like, oh my gosh, you like something, especially my shy little kid who I'm like, you like
yeah,
anything. Like, oh my gosh, let's go. This is so exciting. You're moving your body. So any parents out there who are like, well, what's wrong with any of that? There isn't anything. We're all doing our absolute 100% best because we love our kids and we want them to, feel successful. And
yeah.
I even find myself walking that line of like, do I mention to the coach that she wants to go to the team so that they can keep an eye on her? And I'm like, Rebecca, take a breath, let your
Yeah,
husband pick her up. Like you're getting too emotional about this whole process. So, thank you. You're human. I'm also totally human. And I'm like, Rebecca, like calm down. It's just an after school sport. But I think all of us parents can go like, well, my kid likes something and she's sort of good at it. And I like want to just, I want to be all
yeah,
in with her. So we all do that.
yeah.
So then,
So
okay, so
that
as you continued along, what did you notice about?
Yeah, so that is exactly, you hit that like right on the money, because it was, I didn't mean to do anything that would like cause my child to feel pressure. It was, not, I wanted them to feel like, I wanted Ashland to feel excited. But the ways that I went about it probably weren't very helpful. And so when she got to be level 8, that's when she really started to have her first year of level 8 was pretty solid, but she went a second year, and that's where she really started to have like some mental block issues. And that's actually when we started coming to you, because she asked, she said, hey, I would really like to work with a sports psychologist. I really want to try to get through some of this stuff. Like, I don't know why this is happening. And you kind of feel like you're the only person in the gym when you go through mental blocks. And as a parent, I felt like she was the only person in the gym. I mean, I saw it a little bit from other kids, but I mostly saw kids who were extremely happy doing their sport, loving what they were doing. And I didn't see that side. So I was like, oh gosh, yeah, how do we like try to get through these mental blocks? And one of the biggest things that I learned is that I personally learned was to kind of take a step back. And even though I'm super excited that my kid is in the sport, to be supportive, but to not put pressure, and to be there to not have the dreaded car ride home, which I did at times, talking about the practice and how it went. Maybe you focus on that for 30 seconds to a minute and then you move on. And so that was one piece of it. My daughter probably would say, and I don't want to speak for her, but um, basically being able to talk to coaches about her fears, because that was really helpful for her to be able to say, like, hey, I'm really having a mental block. And just acknowledging that to herself out loud, I think was like super important. The coaches were all pretty good about like really understanding what she was going through, and backing things down before you build things up again. So she learned a lot, and she's taken those lessons like all the way through, and I learned a lot too. And so then she decided when COVID hit, it was like kind of the perfect time to say, hey, I think I'm going to part from this sport. It's a lot on me, and I really want a fresh start. So when that happened, there's some grieving that happens with that, because you identify so strongly with your sport. There was some grieving on my end because I love the sport of gymnastics, and I love the families that I met and the coaches and the gym. And so when she decided to move on, I fully supported her, and we had a real heart to heart. And I said, Ashlyn, tell me what you need if you decide to go forward in sports. And she's like, I need for you not to put any pressure on me. I need to just do this in my own way. And that's when I really heard what she was saying. And so she was deciding between volleyball and diving. And the funny thing is, like, we had some family members who are really good volleyball players, and they're like, now, Ashlyn, how tall are you? And she's like 5'3". They're like, well, maybe diving. And it was a natural fit, because obviously, like, diving fits very well with flipping and twisting that you do in gymnastics. So her first year of diving, it was actually like during COVID, and it was outside, and it was all crazy because it was like a very difficult time. But she had a really nice coach and somebody who really introduced her to the sport. And I want to say for the first 2 weeks, I could feel myself falling back into old patterns, by the way, because this is a new sport and I want to see her do well in it. And I totally caught myself, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not going to do this. And so after that first year, she went on. The coach actually retired because he had a family and a job, and she went on to a new coach. And this was the absolutely most amazing experience. So it's funny, like, before she went to the new coach, we knew the new coach had trained at Olympian at one point, and we knew she had a lot of divers who went to college for diving. And we knew a lot of those divers actually became D1 coaches, which is like fascinating, right? So we weren't sure like what to expect. And I'll never forget, like, you know, finding the right culture. You talk about finding the right culture. The first day of this first practice, I wanted to cry because it was so uplifting. And this coach was having so much fun with her divers. And she had a coach she was working with, and he was like loving it too. And all the kids were like having a great time, and they were joking around, but they were learning new dives. And I was like, wow, this is like really amazing. And what was really amazing is when somebody would, like, they call it fail a dive, but basically splash into the water, people would clap. Like, people would clap for you, like, good for you for trying. And that was also like amazing to me to see. So I was like so taken with this, and I was like, you know what? If Ashland has a coach like this, I am going to be as positive as I can possibly be. And the other thing with this particular coach, she actually is a coach at RPI. Her name is Maria. She has a superpower, and her superpower is patience. And so she really believes in the process and not rushing divers along. Like, sure, she'll get you to where you want to be. And if you have something special you want to accomplish, she'll help you accomplish that. But she works with the diver and where they are and how they're progressing. And so just like that whole concept is really, really interesting. And it completely like took me aback. And I'm like, I want to take some of this patience for me in my life. And I'm going to take this for my daughter, and really emphasize, like, it's important to be patient with yourself. So that was like one of the absolute like amazing things that I learned. And just also like the passion for the sport, and just like loving the sport so much was just so exciting for me to see. And then it became Ashlyn loved it so much, and she just loved the team and the culture. She's like, I've got to do this in college, which was like amazing. I never thought that she would be somebody who would want to go on into college and continue on with her sport. And so the biggest thing that she had learned actually from talking to you and from working with Maria is finding the right fit. So you have to find the right fit with the college, looking at the academic side, but then also looking and making sure the coach and the team and the head coach that they all fit together. And so she, talked to a number of coaches, and then she talked to Cindy O'Donnell at Lehigh and Rob Herb is the head coach there. And she just was like, I totally think they are on the same page as I am, and I totally could see myself succeeding here. And so that was like absolutely amazing. And one of the interesting things actually about her college coach, Cindy O'Donnell, is she's a very competitive person. She went through gymnastics until her first year in college, and then she was injured, couldn't continue on, and then went D1 to Northeastern, and basically like won every meet. She like came up to speed, and then she like won every meet, and she has this like incredible mentality for winning. And she's in their Hall of Fame. She just was inducted into their Hall of Fame. But the interesting part is she also understands, like Maria does, like the mental side of the sport and how to work with student athletes who, are having some fear. These are all sports that involve fear. How to work through that and how to progress in small steps, so that you really get to where you want to go and how you want to see yourself as an athlete in that sport. So it's been an amazing journey, absolutely amazing.
What impresses me so much, I mean, so many things about Ashland's journey, but the fact that she is choosing the program that's worthy of her. And I tell this a lot to athletes who are worried about, getting in or getting accepted, or if they find that their gym is no longer a fit culturally, or that their coaches and they have mismatch of goals. I say, well, when you're trying out at that new gym, you're deciding if they are good enough for you. If that culture is one where you feel like you can thrive. This is not you trying to prove yourself to anybody else. You're interviewing them to decide, is this a place where I can be confident and happy? And it sounds like she has that very much, that she's not going to go someplace where
Yeah.
the culture isn't sound, which is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, that is like such an important part. And having a coach that really understands her, and really listens to her, where they can actually have a conversation about where she is. And it's funny, as far as like, athletes being on a timeline, I think a lot of athletes feel like they have to be on this timeline for getting skills and I'll say that she has really created her own timeline. And some years she's gotten like lots of dives, some years she's gotten a little bit less dives. But this past year she got 7 new dives, and it was really because of positivity, and encouragement and a lot of really great things. And so there is no real like timeline for like when you're getting these skills. There's really something out there for everyone, whether it be like a Division 3 level, Division 2 level, Division 1, or like a club team, as well. And I think that is also one of the important things too. I think sometimes people get caught up into figuring out like which division, and it is more about like what coach, what team is going to be the fit for me. Because believe it or not, they're all different. Like there's some amazing like D3 schools. And they're just like kind of at all different levels within their divisions. So I would say like don't ever like look for the division, like look for the fit, just from my experience.
Advice. Yes. So you talked about how Ashlyn has been able to find her voice. So now she can communicate well with her coaches, which I think
Yeah.
that's all coaches really want is they can't see what's in your head. Athletes often, especially these shy, more anxious ones, are like they don't want to make waves, they don't want to get in trouble, they don't want to not just say yes, sir. What was her process like of coming into her voice? What did that take for her to be able to communicate
Yeah.
well?
So I think that started to happen actually in gymnastics and really has carried through into diving. But I think she really had a lot of mental blocks specifically on beam. I mean, she had it on a couple different events, but definitely on beam. And so, at some point she had to basically say, and she is a more introverted person, but she had to basically tell the coaches, hey, I probably could physically do this. I believe it was like a double back handspring, you know? And, but mentally, I am not quite there yet. And so that was like a really important, it was really important for her to say that out loud and for her to be able to acknowledge that, hey, and because I think that actually sends messages to your brain, like, and so she actually did like exactly what you had suggested. And well, I'm going to go down to the low beam and I'm going to start to do more reps. I'm just going to do a single back handspring and things along those lines. So I think those are the types of things, and just being open about it and being open, even if other gymnasts were like, why are you scared? We're not scared. But even if, some gymnasts were going, and that became apparent to her when she would open up. So I think just um, hearing yourself and acknowledging to yourself and telling someone else, hey, this is where I am, then the coach knows and the coach can um, react accordingly. And so, and basically then when she went into diving, um, Maria is like extremely open. She loves it when people communicate with her. She actually uses a belt system, which not all dive coaches use, but have you heard about this? Where like you put on a belt, so when you're learning a new dive, you're in the belt doing it. So there's some safety and accuracy, or it can create more accuracy as you're like doing as you're doing the dive. So those things like all help somebody who maybe feels a little bit nervous about trying new dives, like knowing you have this. And then once you get to a certain point in that belt, like you're ready, like, you can do this. And the diver feels that, the coach feels that, and it's a beautiful thing.
Well, and it's so important in those critical moments that the diver, the athlete is the one who goes, I think I'm ready, coach. Because
Yeah.
the coach can see, and it's so important. I want to call out also something you said earlier where Ashlyn was able to verbalize, my body can do it, but my mind isn't there yet. And I think that's the most important thing that you can share with a coach is because the coach sees you are 100% capable. I've seen you do it. You've already won meets with this series or, whatever is the skill that's acting up. So that their visual senses are telling them you can do it. They can't feel what's happening in your stomach. They can't feel what the images are in your mind. They can't see that when you swing your arms, you literally freeze in place and you don't know why. So if you can
Yeah.
tell them, I
Yeah.
know I can do this physically, but I think my brain needs an extra mat, or my brain
Yeah.
might need to go to low beam for a minute, then that
Yeah.
they can start to wrap their mind around and hopefully listen,
Yeah.
collaborate on, oh, well, we maybe
Yeah.
have a bunch of mats available, but let's try this. And they start working together to find a solution for the brain and not just the body.
And I think that's exactly what happened. And then in college, same thing as you're getting used to new coaching and everything, like just to be open and everything. Here's where I am. Um, I just think, yeah, that's like a super, super important thing. One thing that I wanted to point out that I did when I was focusing too much on my daughter, like during practices. So I am somebody who always has gone to practice. You know those parents, right? They're like there. But I think I was there for a different reason than a lot of parents. I love the sports of gymnastics and diving. Like I love them. I love to watch the process. So with gymnastics, I was more focused on her and focused on what she was individually doing. But I took a totally different approach for diving. I said, I'm going to learn the sport of diving. And the first year I had a parent who worked with me. She taught me all the numbers and what they meant. She actually had taken diving herself for fun because she was like, as an adult, because she was so into it. So that was like fun to get the basics. But honestly, like in high school, when Ashton was in high school, I listened to everything that the coach said. And I would start to see like, am I like, what correction would I make? So eventually I'd like to become an official with all this like knowledge. But I feel like I just am always learning, and I feel like I can always like learn so much more, and I love it. But it totally took the focus off of watching my daughter in practice. I was watching everybody because I was like trying to learn the sport of diving. I don't know if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Well, and then the key point is you were not then going, Ashlyn, I noticed a thing or two that I might suggest you change about your dive. You zip it. You might have that in your mind or whatever, wherever it is you like take a breath and you go, high five, kiddo, what do you want for dinner? That, and that's where you
Yeah,
leave it.
and that's what we would do on the way home because for the there's be times I would be like, well, why don't you just go for it? Or like thinking in my head, and I would not say a word. And we would talk just a
Bravo.
little bit. She would say a few things to me, and then we would move on. We never talked about diving on the way home. We basically talked about what homework she has and all the other things, in life that they have that are pressures, but it wasn't the sport.
It's so important. And I give myself a one question maximum. So we're walking down the sidewalk to get in the car after, and I'm like, what was your favorite part? Or how did it go? Or did you have fun? It's like one question, and then we find another topic. If they want to tell me what's going on and oh, I'm so proud of this, and they had this coach today, I will 100% listen. I'm here for it. But I give
Right.
myself that just one question so they know I care and I know where they were for the last hour or whatever. And then we just get in the car and I let them lead. And it's a lot of like biting my tongue because I'm like, well, what
Yeah.
event? And did you get that skill? And there's that part of me that really cares and wants to, but I'm very proud of myself every time that I just like put on Taylor Swift and off we go.
Me too. I mean, I felt very proud of myself, like making this transition. It was really hard because I, of course, wanted to know everything that she was thinking about, how she was doing and this and that. But then I was like, you know what? No, that's not the right way.
Yeah. So, okay. Now thinking back to gymnastics just for another minute,
Yeah.
you said there were some kids that seemed so happy in the
Mm.
gym. And do you have a sense of what those families might have been doing that would
Yeah.
contribute to that?
So actually, it's yes. Well, it's funny. A lot of those families, I didn't see their parents in the gym all that much. The kids were just having fun doing their thing. Um, there was one gymnast. Actually, she has gone on to be like a really great NCAA gymnast. Sydney Shoemaker. She's on Auburn's team, or she's just graduating. But she always seemed like so happy. She would have injuries and she was just so happy to be there. And
Mm.
she was happy to see her friends and everything else. And I remember like very specifically at this one meet that we all went to at Parquette's, that she is an amazing vaulter. And she was an amazing vaulter back then. And she like did great on vault. She did great on like everything, but she had a really tough night on bars. Like it was just like one of those nights where like things, and she had been coming out of like injuries. And I just remember she got her score on bars and she just smiled and laughed, like moved on to the next thing. And I'm like, wow, because she's taking this sport for what it is. And interestingly, her mom actually was the beam coach. Her mom was a gymnast. So her mom really understood, the mental side of the sport and understood a lot that parents who were not gymnasts understand. And I think their family was always about just celebrating the sport and having fun with it.
Mm.
And that really like came across to their children. So yeah, and there's other kids that just really just seemed like they were like loving it and would go through times where like maybe they weren't getting things and that would be frustrating, but they I felt like had some confidence to know that they were gonna get those skills back and everything was gonna be all right. And I'm also here with my friends, right?
Mm.
Doing gymnastics. So I really I really wanted that so badly for my daughter. I really didn't care about the scores or those things. I really wanted her to be happy. And so when that happened in diving, and I saw my kid is that kid, my kid's the kid that isn't crazy about the scores. She's just having such a good time learning the skills and with her friends. That made me so happy.
Okay, and I have to ask, when someone goes out there and is happy and they're there to enjoy, how does she do well? Does she perform
She
well? Can
she
you have
absolutely
both?
does well. Yeah, and she really was actually not planning to go to a Division 1 school. She had thought, this is why I say like just look at every college for like, the value of the coaching and diving and all that. Because she was concerned because she's an engineering major of like how am I going to balance engineering and whatnot. And so she landed up basically talking to this coach at Lehigh and being really like interested in their program and was like, okay, I'm going D1. And so the Patriot League, I always say it's no joke. They're very good divers. And it's kind of like the best of the best, you see like in high school and everything. And I felt like she had learned the new dives and she did really well for her first year diving. She just like her dives were right on, and she was happy that she had accomplished so much in the year. And and here she is. I watched the Patriot Leagues the year before on TV, and here she was doing this and looking great. So it was exciting.
And I think another kind of theme I'm hearing in our conversation today is this long game focus. That when coaches are they're in it for the long game and they go, well, you're going to get there and we're patient and you can add these skills and you can add these dives and this it will come. Then athletes are happier. They feel more confident. They feel proud of their progress rather than always having to, reach these milestones to feel okay, which then allows them to have longevity in their sport because they're not burning out.
Yes. Yeah, I really think that was like a huge part, honestly. And in high school, when she was working with Maria, Maria is methodical and so is Ashland. So that like worked really well together. And it wasn't about like you have to get this next skill by the AAU meet because otherwise there's nothing like that. It was, you know, sure, I'm going to help you get to college, and yeah, you'll get this when you get this. It was just so positive that I think the positivity was just so good for her. To be in that kind of atmosphere where like, okay, like we'll get stuff when we get there. And
And
yeah, it was really nice.
and it's such a great example of what I am like my whole mission in life is to prove that you can perform at your best and be happy at the same time. That you don't have to
Yeah.
just be happy and have a good time and everyone gets a medal and everyone's a snowflake and whatever, but nobody's actually maximizing their performance. Or you got the other side where it's we must win at all costs and I don't care to stop crying and
Right.
wrap it up and
Right.
keep
Right.
pushing. It's like you really can have this balance. Now, if you look at that and
Yeah.
go, okay, we've achieved this perform happy ideal. What are the main factors that have set your kid up to be in this ideal sports situation?
Well, I think it goes once again towards communicating with your coaches and, really having them listen to you, having coaches that listen to you, being in the right culture, like finding like a really good fit, finding a place where you think your child is going to be happy. Um, and also seeing like if the sport lines up with who they are. Because for my daughter, she was in a really positive gym, but she had a lot of her own fears with gymnastics because even if you're in a positive gym, you still see injury. I mean, injury happens in gymnastics at every single gym in America. And so for her, that was actually like really hard to see when people would get injured and like her own concerns. And that was kind of like overpowering. And so that was like where it came time to switch sports. And I think it really is okay to switch sports if if your child is really like, you know what, this isn't right. And kind of listening to them and being like, and so for us, it was like finding a very similar sport that does have like, by the way, it does have injury, but it's a little bit different. And so that actually like helped so much, like just tweaking it a little bit and going to a different sport. So like also like kind of paying attention to that. And then listening to your child, acknowledging their fears. I think it's really easy to say, like my concern was if I acknowledge her fears, then maybe she'll quit the sport because we're talking too much about fear. Where it's really the opposite, in my opinion. Now it's like normal to have fear in gymnastics and diving and ice skating and all these sports, and acknowledging that and sitting with. I think you always say sitting with it, like sitting with
Mhm.
your fear, but then moving on. When you're ready to move on, and understanding that's part of the process. And I didn't understand the process,
Yeah. Well, I think
so
of it like a smoke alarm. If the smoke alarm is going off and you just keep turning it off, shutting it off, take the batteries off, rip it off the wall, it's like going to get louder and louder. Your brain is telling you there's a threat. It's whispering, there's a threat. Something doesn't feel right. Something's not safe. And you're like, shut up, brain. I have a meet on Saturday. I got to just chuck this thing or I'm going to get yelled at if I don't go. And so these kids turn off their safety mechanism, which makes it louder and louder and louder till the point where they finally can't do anything. They're freezing in place. They're crying. They don't know why they can't go. It's like, well, if you feel afraid and then you say that you feel afraid and then you feel understood, of course, honey, this is scary stuff. I absolutely understand why you would feel afraid. Their brain's like, thanks for listening. Okay, now we can solve it. But if the
Yeah.
brain doesn't feel heard, it's going to keep, creating bigger and bigger problems, which is why, like you say, when you find a coach who listens to you and when you have a parent that isn't like, you're fine, fix, 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 they're just like, oh my gosh, that's got to be so hard. Then the kid, it's
Yeah.
the craziest thing. I don't know if you see this with Ashland, but when you just are like, wow, that's got to be so hard, they're
Right.
like, yeah, and here's what I'm going to do about it.
For
They
everything,
they
not
can
just
solve their
gym.
own stuff. It's like, and it's better than the
Yeah.
idea that we had because they're bought in on it and they're going to take action, even though our ideas are amazing, but they don't care. They need to find their own ideas and they need to just feel heard and understood more than they need us to fix anything for them.
I think that's right on the money. And I think that also is about other things too. Like it's about school as well. Like it's really easy to put pressure on your child with school. I did that too. And I have a child that does not need pressure put on them for school. These kids have a lot of traits in common. The kids who are often, pretty good at gymnastics and sports and things along those lines. I'll tell you one really cool thing that my daughter learned about dealing with feeling anxious at meets.
Mm.
So she actually learned that if you do like your math homework during a meet in between like whatever you're doing, that it switches your brain to the other side and it kind of takes it out of the side that's feeling all that anxiety and switches it. And so she used to bring like her math, and people know she loves math, so like people would like laugh and everything, but she was really doing it for coping at the meet, which was
Yes,
cool.
there's a Utah gymnast who at the final was doing an anatomy test right before she went out on
I
floor.
saw that. I
Yep.
saw
And
that. Yeah.
it's like you say, it's opening up the frontal lobes that are the part of your brain that remembers, a cake recipe or the lyrics to a song or what the bones of the spinal cord are, doing something that requires you to do strategic, rational thinking actually turns that part of your brain back on that can say, there is no tiger. Nothing's on fire. I'm just having some heightened sensation in my body and I'm going to go do something I love. And they
Yeah.
can get out of that survival fight or flight mode by switching that on. So yeah, fun fact, you can do math while you tumble. You can think of
Yeah.
ice cream flavors. Like there's so many things that can help with that.
Yeah. She eventually didn't need to do it. She's at the point now where she doesn't. She just
Confidence is
actually,
up enough.
I mean, she was like waving to me, at the championships. And that was like, I mean, knowing who she was as a gymnast when she was young to like now seeing her wave and smile was like, wow, this is really cool.
So cool. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, what a gift to connect with you. I'd love to ask one final question. If you
Sure.
could go back and talk to, Susan of the past when Ashlyn was 8 or 9 and give her just some advice that would smooth the path a little bit, what do you think is the most
Oh,
important thing you could tell her?
well, one thing is I wish I had discovered you back then. I actually think it would be great for parents to have a course before their kids begin sports and to educate themselves. So educating myself about this type of, about the mental side of the sport would be really have been helpful. Also, just not putting pressure, even if it's subtle pressure, not playing the Olympic theme song in the car or not being really like loud and encouraging and over the top. Being subtle about the whole thing, and taking things in stride and realizing it's not the end of the world if your child decides not to continue on with the sport. Life still goes on. Life's still wonderful. You're going to be excited by the next thing your child does. So just take a step back, take a breath, and let them do their thing.
Amazing. Susan, what a gift. Thank you so much for
It
sharing
was
your
really fun.
wisdom and your journey. I mean, I know what a big evolution that you have made, and that so many parents who we get the pleasure of working with in Perform Happy, they make that same transition from, we just got to fix this mental block now, to, a very different perspective on the whole thing, which not only, yes, the kids get their skills, or at least if they want to, they have a concrete way, but they also get to really settle into, well, who am I as an athlete? How do I work through fear in general? And, I think everybody comes out the other end with a much stronger relationship and the ability to be joyful in their sport again, on the
Yeah.
good days and the bad days. So I've seen that in you, and thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Yeah, thank you. This is wonderful.